Okay, good morning. Good afternoon, actually. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Donna McCallie-Holly. I am the Grant and Program Director for the Lake Hopatcong Foundation. We would like to welcome a couple of our staff that are on, and if I'm missing anyone on our staff, please feel free to chime in and unmute yourself to introduce yourself. I know we have Caitlin Duran on. Caitlin joined the foundation a couple months ago, and she's our Deputy Development Director. We also have Holly Odgers on the call. Holly is our Communications Director. Is there anyone else from the LHF staff on the call at this time?
I am.
That's Lauren Rossi. Lauren is our Interim Executive Director. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you.
So this is our second program in our Thirst for Knowledge learning series. And Marty Kane is going to be our speaker, and I'll turn it over to Marty in just a minute or two. But first, I just wanted to tell you briefly about the Lake Hopatcong Foundation. For those of you that might not be familiar with our organization, the foundation was formed as a 501c3 nonprofit back in 2012. And our mission is for the Lake Hopatcong Foundation. We dedicate ourselves to protecting the lake environment and enhancing the lake experience, bringing together public and private resources to encourage a culture of sustainability and stewardship on and around New Jersey's largest lake for this and future generation. Our mission is very far-reaching. We work in the environment, education, community building, public safety, recreation, and arts and culture. Marty, for those of you that might not know him, although most of you I'm probably sure do, Marty is the chairman of the Lake Hopatcong Foundation Board of Trustees. He is also the longtime president of the Lake Hopatcong Historical Museum. So we'd like to thank Marty for volunteering his time to present this program for you. And again, if you have any questions, put them in the chat box, and I'm going to turn it over to Marty. Thank you, Marty.
Great, thank you. And thank you all for attending today and letting me do what I really love to do, which is talk about the history of our lake. And let me just put in a little state that before Donna and I got here, in our prospective sites today, we were going around with the team that's putting biochar in the lake. And just, it's a great project, and with some of the other great projects on the harmful algal blooms, there's some really good things going on this summer. Although, as you all know, it's been a very trying summer. All right, let's get on with some history. I'm going to try to share my screen, and hopefully this works just as well as it did when we practiced it. Okay. When we look at Lake Hopatcong today, it's a much bigger lake than it was once here. In fact, Donna, can you see this arrow?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. The original lake, if you would have come here prior to its damming beginning in the 1750s, would have started just about, I saw the Heatons were on, just about at their house out here on Point Pleasant. And basically everything here would have just been either wetlands or a stream going out to the Musconetcong River. So the original lake basically started right around here and went up to a little bit past Prospect Point, or just about to Prospect Point, and then it did go over toward Byram Cove. So this would have been your whole body of water. From about Prospect Point north, you had a trout stream, or a river, if you will. It was the Musconetcong River that continued northward and connected up with a smaller body of water, which was known as Little Pond. And this area down here was known as Great Pond, or Hopatcong Pond, or Brooklyn Pond over the years. The damming started in the 1750s, and it kind of continued in the 1820s and 1840s. Since the 1840s, the lake is the way we know it today. Our little friend here, who we used to call Fred the Head when he used to visit with us at the museum, just one of the many Native American or Lenape artifacts that have been found here at Lake Hopatcong. That one was found while digging a well in Mount Arlington. Very unusual. It's an effigy face. Archaeologists think it has some kind of religious significance. It's about probably about 18 inches high. But thousands and thousands of points and arrowheads and everything have been found, which really just reflect the large Native American population that once lived here. And when we say large, it probably was upwards of 200, which for the Lenape population was a large site, and largely, from what we know in the findings, would have been in the area where Halsey and Raccoon Islands are today, except with less water in the lake. That was all part of the mainlands and a big meadow. Remained a very sleepy area here until the building of the Morris Canal in the 1820s. If you will, the Morris Canal was the first highway across New Jersey. It was Route 80 made of water. Basically, it connected, just like Route 80, it connected the Hudson River with the Delaware River. It took a kind of little less than direct route, so it could take in towns like Jersey City, Newark, Patterson, and then flow outward to the west. It was important to Lake Hopatcong because what it did to Lake Hopatcong's development. Basically, the canal was designed around the water of Lake Hopatcong. Lake Hopatcong was the largest single source of water for the Morris Canal. Whereas the Morris Canal needed enormous water and hooked into every river and lake it could touch crossing New Jersey, Lake Hopatcong was at its highest point and fed water both ways. This would have been where the Hopatcong State Park is today. Actually, little pieces of wood over here and here. Every 5 years when they do the major drawdown, they are still there in the ground, and you can still see them when the lake is lowered that much. Looking out, this would have been your looking over toward Bertrand Island. And that's how the canal entered Lake Hopatcong. The main body of the canal was about a quarter-mile away, over where the old Pathmark Shopping Center is, but it was fully connected with Lake Hopatcong through a feeder canal, which was completely navigable. And that's how many boats and people used to come in the early years. You know, because of the enormous engineering effort to build a canal where you're in hilly country like we are here, you had to have a lot of technology of the day go into it. That was one of the inclined planes that were built here. That was the one actually over in Ledgewood. Closest to the lake, you had inclined planes in Shippingport and in Fort Morris, just because literally the boats had to climb mountains. It's amazing with no electricity, no motors, that they could pull boats 80 tons up hills like that. Really interesting and technology. Here's actually not a plane, but a lock. And basically because Lake Hopatcong was raised, you had to climb up 12 feet from the level of the canal to get into Lake Hopatcong. So you had to go through a lock to get there. And that very cute little building in the background was the lock tender's house. Messinger family who lived in the lock tender's house. And we love that building because today it's the home of the Lake Hopatcong Historical Museum, preserved today. And now would have run right behind our building down the hill. Lake Hopatcong go from this kind of sleepy, little bit industrial area with the Morris Canal and turn into a major Northeast tourism resort. And it really all goes back to the Morris Canal. As many of you know who live in this area, you have to soften your water. There's a lot of metallic content, ore content in your water, particularly iron ore up in these hills up here. As you back away from Lake Hopatcong and you go along where today's Weldon Road is, you had enormous amounts of iron ore. You had to weld in the Dodge, the Ford mines, all the way up to Sparta Mountain, where you would have hit one of the largest mines of them all, which was the Ogden mine, later the Edison mine. So they had all this iron ore, and they had really no way to get it out to market. What they used to do in the very early years is they take it on horse and wagon to the northernmost part of Lake Hopatcong, load it onto boats, and drag these boats down the lake to the Morris Canal over here. But anytime you're dealing with putting a lot of iron ore on horses and wagons, it's not very effective. So for years, they thought when railroads started being developed of connecting all the iron ore mines up to Lake Hopatcong so they could quickly get the iron ore out on the Morris Canal. The Civil War breaks out. There's an enormous need for iron ore. They finally charter and build this railroad. It's only a 10-mile long railroad. It goes from Nolan's Point straight up to Ogdensburg. 10 miles long, brings iron ore down to Lake Hopatcong. By the time it opens, the Civil War is over. It's 1866, but for the next 16 years, that would be the main source of cargo on the Morris Canal, bring all this iron ore down. And in fact, if you're sitting at the Jefferson House restaurant, or if you could have been in the 1880s, even though the restaurant wasn't there, this would have been your view. The big iron ore dock right here, you know, the Jefferson House would be over here. And if those of you that know, whenever the lake gets low, a big pile of rocks show up here, because that's the whole bottom of the old iron ore dock. In fact, those of you that have lost pieces of propeller here now know why. So, there, you know, the railroads are expanding during this period. And you're using this 10-mile railroad to bring iron ore down to the lake. And, you know, as railroads are expanding, they're saying, well, why do we bringing iron ore down on a railroad and putting it onto the canal? The canal still closes all winter because it's frozen. It still takes 3 to 5 days to cross New Jersey on the Morris Canal. Can't we just hook up this iron ore railroad with the main railroad? And finally, in 1882, that's what they do. They bring in the Central Railroad of New Jersey. It hooks in right at Nolan's Point, and the iron ore can come right out on the main line. So basically, at that point, the Morris Canal loses its main source of cargo, and that really spells the end for the Morris Canal. They'd fight about what to do with it for the next 40 years, the politicians, until they finally abandoned it. But that was really what kills the Morris Canal. But on the other hand, it now hooks up this lake to the main line of the Central Railroad of New Jersey. And it's like, you know, they're looking for cargo of what they can bring out here other than iron ore. So they quickly find that the ice industry is a good one. You can cut up this lake and send ice back to the east. But the other thing you can do is you can bring people. And you have to realize the Central Railroad of New Jersey, even though you had to take a ferry across from Manhattan, you can take that ferry from Manhattan, get the train right at Jersey City, and be out in Lake Hopatcong in like a little over an hour and a half from New York. So it's very convenient. In fact, I don't know if you can take the train right now and get out that quickly from New York. So, okay, they start bringing people out. The railroads start promoting it. And when I say railroads, that's because the Central Railroad went out to Nolan's Point. The lack for years, they just never put a station there because they never saw a reason to build a station there. They start seeing people coming out to the lake. They put a station and landing. So all of a sudden now you have 2 railroads promoting the lake. What happens? More people come. Well, people start coming. You got to give them something to do. It leads to the building of 2 great pavilions. The first great, both at Nolan's Point, which when you go down to the Windlass or the Jefferson House restaurants and you go, God, couldn't they have built, like, why did they build them here with these windy roads to get down there? That's because those buildings were always built with the railroad in mind. The train used to come right in front and you just got off the train and walked in. They didn't have to take those windy roads down in the winter. So here's the first great pavilion. It was called the Lake Pavilion, quickly became known by the owner's last name. His name was John Allen. It's called Allen's Pavilion. And one thing I'll point out to you, the folks that know the lake a little bit, I mean, this is Castle Rock. In fact, you know, Mr. Zigady's house would be right over here now. But look what you have here. There's no Brady Bridge. Look how wide the lake is going up toward Woodport. And for all the folks that, you know the northern part of the lake, because East Shore Estates wasn't built yet, which was all landfill in the 40s and 50s, and the bridge. So the lake really continued up very wide in those years. Okay, this pavilion is built, has a little bit of everything for everybody. Has a dance hall, has restaurants, has a swimming beach up a little bit down the road, has a picnic area, shady trees, has a lot going on there. You can spend a whole day, rent a boat. Well, you know, business is good. A second great pavilion is built just around the corner. Now, the first pavilion is built at the location of where the Windlass is today. In fact, the Windlass sits right in this area over here. The second building is built where the Jefferson House is today. Both buildings long gone, but both locations still stay with us today. In fact, this enormous structure all burnt in 1924. A huge fire, and then the building we know as a Jefferson House was built in 1926. But just look how much you have going on here. Photographic studio, an early movie theater, 2 hotels going up the hill, what they call a department store, a hotel, and on the back side you have an ice cream parlor, a meat market, a vegetable market, just a ton of stuff all packed in here. In fact, the first Chinese restaurant at Lake Hopatcong, owned by 2 Irishmen, was opened up right here, known as Hawley's Chinese Food. You know, their big dish was chop suey, showing it wouldn't probably be recognized as Chinese food today, but interesting. Okay, people who came up here, you know, Nolan's Point was looked at a little bit as honky-tonk. You have, you know, you had a carousel opening up, you had shooting galleries, you had all this stuff going on. People of wealth wanted to have a really fancy hotel open here, and they got together and they invested in what was called the Breslin Hotel. It was put high up above Mount Arlington, where Edgemere is today, and it is, in fact, some of you will recognize this boathouse was actually there while the hotel was there. That's where the Kitchens property is today, just so you can put it, and a lot of Crabtree House you just quite can't see. They had it hidden in the trees, but that's over here. So you can see, enormous hotel, 250 rooms, really catered toward an exclusive and fancy crowd. Very waspy by, you know, that was who would have been allowed to go there. In fact, they didn't like the crowd for a few years in the 1890s, and they turned it into a private club for about 5 years before it became the New Breslin Hotel. In 1918, it's bought by a different group. It's renamed the Alamac Hotel, and it would operate as the Alamac until it burned in 1948. Not just a hotel was built there, but they built millionaires' homes around it. It was known as Breslin Park, and you can see in the background some of these millionaires' homes. And about 7 of those original homes, if you think about that Edgemere, where a lot of Crabtree's houses, some of those large homes that still survive here today, they all go back to this Breslin Park area. And of course, that was not the only fancy hotels that would be built at the lake. You had Castle Edward, just up from where the Hudson Maxim School is, a wonderful building. It was actually built in 3 different parts between 1908 and 1913. They just built straight up the hill in River Styx. Amazing structure. It would burn in 1931 during the Depression when it was closed. You know, another hotel, very popular. You can see how this hotel just was expanded over the years as times were good at Lake Hopatcong. Not necessarily in any architectural style, but it just got bigger and bigger. It's where Floyd and Hover are today, those roads up in Mount Arlington. And the earliest hotel we knew of at the lake was the Hopatcong House. If you know where the liquor factory is today, on Lake there, it was there prior to the Civil War. In fact, very interestingly, before that railroad came up to Nolan's Point, we had 3 hotels, 3 small hotels here. By the 19-teens, we had over 40 hotels and rooming houses, several over 100 rooms each operating at the lake, just to show you what the railroads did to this place. A lot of people ask us what happened to all these hotels. Almost everyone burned. Some of them survived long enough to be taken down. A few of the smaller ones are still private homes today. This was the only hotel at Lake Hopatcong that was ever built to be fireproof. It literally opened in August of 1911, and 11 months later, before the landscaping was even in, it was completely destroyed by a gas explosion, nearly killing the owner who was changing the gas at the time. And these stairs right in the middle can still be found on a property in River Styx if you start digging under the dirt. They never took them out, but the hotel's, of course, long gone to Colonial Inn. In those years, not everybody came up and stayed at fancy hotels. Camping was very, very popular. All you needed to do was rent a piece of land and bring your tent. Very popular amongst young people and families alike. This would have been, or this is King Cove. There you see Bedbug Island up there, Bertrand Island. River Styx, very popular. This is the part where West River Styx Road is today. In fact, this building was made more permanent and was only taken down a few years ago. But very popular way of spending your summer at Lake Hopatcong. Remember, people would come here by train, all transportation was by water. So people ask, how come people built those houses on Halsey Island or way back when, or Raccoon Island? Well, it didn't matter if you lived on an island back then. You were getting there by boat, and you were only staying there in the summer for a couple of months. So it didn't really matter where your house was. This is how you were getting there. That was the biggest steamboat on the lake, the White Line steamer Hopatcong. As you can see, they may not have quite had the same safety standards that we have these days. It's kind of hard to imagine that many people on the Mislata. And here was a more typical, there were two different steamboats operated on the lake, affectionately known as the Black Line and the White Line. That's in front of what would become the Hotel Bon Air, where the Arrow Crest sits today. And here's a whole group of happy campers coming to the, not campers, but hotel goers coming to the Breslin Hotel for an event. And that's Chestnut Point in the background. Kind of a different way of thinking of getting around Lake Hopatcong and thinking you arrive by train, and that was your taxi all around the lake when you were going somewhere. You wanted to go out to a different restaurant, you wanted to go to dance hall, that's how you would have gone. When the lake was a great resort, a lot of famous people, just like they might go to Vail or other places today, they would have come to Lake Hopatcong. It was just a popular resort. One of the first ones to come here was Lotta Crabtree. When they were building that fancy Breslin Park, her mom surprised her with a gift of the house here at Lake Hopatcong. She really added a lot of glamour to the lake and a lot of publicity to the lake. And actually, she had the house from 1885 to about, used it heavily from about 1885 to 1900 in the summers, and then she rented it for quite a number of years. There's the house today. Very famous architect designed it, same one that did the Breslin Hotel. Frank Furness, more known for his work in Cape May, did the Physic House, but he was out of Philadelphia. A wonderful house. The O'Donnells have done an amazing job restoring it and maintaining it. Hudson Maxim, a lot of people know from Hopatcong because the name Hudson Maxim, his wife's name Durbin, is all over the place. Hudson Maxim School. Inventor, industrialist, came here at the turn of the 20th century. There he is with his wife. He loved to drive. He had one hand after he blew the other one off in an explosion, but it didn't keep him from the roads of Hopatcong. This was his estate. Some of you will recognize the little observatory because it's still here today. It was served as an observatory and an ice house. There was a hotel next door that he would own. That was his main house. His laboratory was up the hill. Had 3 guest houses, 2 of which actually survive today. His garage still survives today. Unfortunately, the house and the boathouse was built in 1905. It was an incredible structure built of stone and steel. It would still be there today, but it was removed in the 50s when an era when a lot of things old were considered bad and new was considered good. A lot of other famous people came up here in the day. Milton Berle would stay at the Alamac Hotel, the old Breslin. Here he is with his mother, who looks a lot like he did in later life when he would dress in drag, and the owner of the hotel. Joe Cook, probably our most famous person to ever live here because he always talked about us in his act on radio and about Lake Hopatcong. He would mention it on Broadway when he would perform. He'd work it into some of his lines. His house still stands in Davis Cove. Oops. The house was known as Sleepless Hollow for the great parties he threw here. There's Babe Ruth on his golf course up here at Lake Hopatcong. We have his piano that people would sign when he came to his house. You know, it's names such as Ginger Rogers, Babe Ruth, Marx Brothers, at least 2 of them. You know, Rube Goldberg, just amazing parties he threw here. And he really got incredible coverage for the lake in newspapers and magazines. The trolley also came here. It came right in front of this good-looking building that is now the Lake Hopatcong Foundation's home. And the trolley actually was, you know, your first bus service all over Lake Hopatcong, all over northern New Jersey before people really had cars. And trolleys often look for places that people would want to go to on weekends. And normally they would try to make it at the end of the trolley line so that you would have the highest fare. That's what happened here at Lake Hopatcong. The trolley line arrived in 1908. They needed to build a bridge, the same bridge we're still arguing about today. They're the ones that built heavy trolleys over the train tracks here at Landing, because they wanted to take people, there's that bridge, they wanted to take them to the right and out to a bathing beach. And that would be the idea, that you'd come out here for a bathing beach. Well, pretty soon around that bathing beach, someone put a steam-powered carousel, they put up a dance hall, and before you knew it, you had Bertrand Island Park. And that's what really caused. We were originally a trolley park, if you will. The trolley disappeared in the 20s, and we had bus service here for a while, but of course, for most of the years, it was cars and boats that would come here. The upper part of the park, many of you know, the roller coaster was the first one built anywhere in this area in 1925. The old mill, which would become the Lost River. The bathing beach, back then, it was considered a really big deal that you could come bathing here in fresh water. You didn't have to go in one of those dirty pools, you know, so things like that, that was really advertised in the early years. That's how probably many of you remember the park. That's a 1962 photo. I know when you were a kid, if you grew up here, the park seems so big, and you walk the property today and you just wonder, like, how could they have gotten that much? It had about 20 major rides in the games, and of course the dance hall, which would originally the June Rose Ballroom and would later just be known as the Villa. That should bring back a few memories. Okay, the hotels disappear. The hotels disappear for basically 3 reasons. The Great Depression comes and the economy is a shambles. A lot of places go out of business. People don't have money for hotels. The next thing is people start moving to a different railroad-driven resort, the 2 railroads, the Lackawanna and the Central Railroad. People start going in cars. They can now start going to places like the Catskills, the Poconos. Lake Hopatcong had been a major resort at that point for almost 60 years. So it starts, and then World War II comes, and there's gas rationing, and people can't drive. So by the time World War II is over, the lake is very different. Very few hotels still exist here anymore, and we've become a different type of community. We become more like the Jersey Shore, where people, you know, rent bungalows, they have second homes, just a few hotels are left, but people still come up here. And during that post-World War II period, social life around the lake centers in River Styx. You have all these bars that you can walk to and taverns with entertainment every night, especially on weekends, on both sides of the River Styx Bridge. And you have places like the Madhouse, which you saw, and you have Sheppy's, and you have the Log Cabin, and of course the Bon Air Lodge, and there you see the bridge. Some of you remember the Bon Air, it's where the Arrow Crest sits today. And you had other places too, all of which, you know, gave a sense of, and literally in these years, they would have a party every Labor Day weekend, give the lake back to the Indians, because that's how much life changed once you got past Labor Day. And of course, you know, things continued along that way. And there's some of our happy party goers. They just dress a little bit more in the clubs back then than they do now. But they can really continue along that way until the late 1950s, when the idea is put forward to build this big interstate road. And, you know, in the 60s, they're designing it and they start building it. And to people around the lake, they go, wow, this is great. The hotels can come back. You know, we're going to have a really new, you know, a real powerful new summer community out here. Never did they ever think of what Route 80 would actually do, is make this commuter territory. It was never even foreseen there. So that's what really happened, is the 60s become this big transition period into the 70s, where people, all those summer houses become all year round. Where we come in, where the lake has great, we like to say is we still can't bear it. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to take